They are perhaps the most photographed soldiers in the world. But behind the Renaissance flourish of striped tunics and plumed helmets lies a truth rarely glimpsed by the public eye. These men are among the most elite bodyguards on earth with an incredible history. The Swiss Guard, loyal only to the Pope, has endured for over 5 centuries, not through spectacle but steel and a willingness to die for the man they serve. The year was 1506. Europe simmered with ambition and violence. Italy, divided into city-states and papal territories, was a chessboard upon which kings, emperors and dukes moved their pieces. In the midst of this sat Rome, sacred, splendid and vulnerable. Pope Julius II, known to history as the Warrior Pope, understood well that spiritual authority did not guarantee physical safety. If the papacy were to endure, it needed defenders, loyal ones, and disciplined. He looked to the north, to the jagged peaks of the old Swiss Confederacy. For decades, Swiss mercenaries had carved out a fearsome reputation across the blood-soaked fields of Europe. Forged in the brutal realities of mountain warfare and hardened by a culture of communal discipline, these soldiers had become synonymous with battlefield excellence. In the late 15th century, they shattered the mighty Burgundian army at the battles of Grandson, Murten and Nancy, where Charles the Bold, the last Duke of Burgundy, met his end. This effectively ended Burgundy as a European power. Their victory over the armoured nobility of one of Europe's most powerful duchies stunned the continent and established the Swiss as elite infantry. By the early 16th century, Swiss mercenaries were in high demand, serving the kings of France, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Duchy of Milan. Their reputation rests not only on skill but on loyalty. They served those who paid them, but once sworn, they held their line to the death. Now in the heart of Christendom, they would be called to serve not a crown, but the keys of heaven. They would serve the Vicar of Christ. On January 22nd, 1506, 150 Swiss soldiers marched into Rome through the Porta del Popolo, led by Captor von Selenen. They were received by Pope Julius II in St. Peter's Square, where he greeted them as the defenders of the Church's freedom, and thus the Pontifical Swiss Guard was born. Their task was clear: protect the Pope and defend the Vatican, with their lives if necessary. That necessity will come all too soon. The moment that would define the Guard and seal its legend came just 2 decades later. In 1527, Rome found itself once more the prize of imperial ambition. Troops loyal to Charles V, Holy Roman Empire, had grown restless and unpaid. Their commanders could no longer restrain them. What began as a military advance soon became a ravenous mob of over 20,000 soldiers descending upon the Eternal City. On the morning of May 6th, they breached the walls. Fire and blood followed. Churches were looted, nuns attacked, sacred relics shattered. Amid the chaos, the Swiss Guard rallied to a single cause: to save Pope Clement VII. Outnumbered more than 100 to 1, 189 guardsmen formed a defensive wall near the steps of the old St. Peter's Basilica, alongside the remnants of other Roman troops. Their halberds clashed with imperial swords as they bought time for the Pope to escape through the Picetto di Borgo, a secret elevated passage linking the Vatican to the Castel San Angelo. Of those 189 men, 147 were cut down in the courtyard. The remaining 42 escorted the Pope to safety. That sacrifice became more than a story. It became a sacred charge. Every May 6th, new recruits take their oath of service on the very day their predecessors died. A blood covenant renewed in silence and ceremony. The Swiss Guard's mettle was proven in blood. The centuries to come would test their resilience in other ways. As monarchies fell and republics rose, as revolutions overturned thrones and a map of Europe was redrawn, the Swiss Guard endured. They watched the Papal States grow, then dissolve. They stood guard as Napoleon's forces occupied Rome. In 1798, when French revolutionary troops deposed Pope Pius VI, the Swiss Guard was forcibly disbanded. But just 2 years later, under Pope Pius VII, it was revived. This wasn't the last time the Swiss Guard would be disbanded, but they were restored every time, a testament to its indispensability. If you found this story as compelling as I have in telling it, consider hitting the like button. It It really helps small channels like mine grow. And if you're into lesser known history, subscribe for more. Now let's look at how the modern Swiss Guard evolved. When the Pope lost his temporal kingdom in 1870 and retreated behind the walls of the Vatican, the Guard did not fade. Instead, they symbolically shut the gates of the Apostolical Palace, choosing to defend not land, but the person of the Pontiff. Their battlements became the halls of the Vatican. By the 19th century, the Swiss Guard had drifted far from the steel discipline of its founding years. As the Papal States dwindled and political power slipped from the Pope's hands, the Guard's role shrank with it. No longer standing sentry at the frontiers of a vast papal domain, they became fixtures within a shrinking court, symbols of continuity but not combat. Recruitment standards weakened, military training lapsed. The once feared halberdiers of Rome now stood more for ceremony than defense, their presence reduced to polite pageantry at state occasions and solemn masses. Though they still wore the livery of warriors, they had ceased to be one. It was in this period of decline that the commander Jules Rapont emerged with a vision to reclaim the Guard's former stature. Appointed in 1910, Rapont was a Swiss military officer, steeped in both discipline and history. He recognized that the Guard had become a hollow image, bright on the outside but hollow within. Determined to restore its martial and moral backbone, he implemented sweeping reforms. Entry requirements were tightened, only single Swiss Catholic men with prior military service would be admitted. Drill routines were reintroduced, discipline reasserted, and a new esprit de corps began to take shape. But perhaps his most lasting legacy was visual. Drawing inspiration from the 16th century armour and Renaissance portraits, Rapont designed a new uniform. Blue, red and gold stripes to honour the Medici, high collars and puff sleeves to echo the grandeur of the past. Completed in 1914, the new garb was more than theatre, it was a statement. The Guard would not only look like soldiers again, they would act like them. Under Rapont, the Swiss Guard ceased being a relic and became once more a living institution, bound by tradition, sharpened by reform. They remained when Garibaldi seized Rome and when Italy unified, and when the world wars shook the globe. During World War II, the Guards silently fortified the Vatican, preparing machine guns in defense of Pope Pius XII against any threat of German intrusion. Ready to sacrifice themselves again, just as their predecessors had done in 1527. Though the feared invasion never came, their readiness spoke volumes. In 1929, the Lateran Treaty formally created the independent state of Vatican City. Still, the Swiss Guard stood as both tradition and shield, their presence a quiet constant through decades of uncertainty. That continuity was shattered by the report of gunfire. On May 13, 1981, Pope John Paul II entered St. Peter's Square in an open-top vehicle, smiling and waving to the crowd. As he reached out to bless a child, a man in the crowd raised a Browning pistol and fired. The bullet struck the Pope in the abdomen and hand. Within seconds, Swiss Guards and Vatican police tackled the assailant. John Paul II survived, barely, but the illusion of invulnerability had been shattered. It was a moment that transformed the role of the Swiss Guard forever. No longer could they be satisfied with ceremony, the Vatican required more, and the Guard would rise to meet the need. In the 21st century, the Swiss Guard has quietly become a fully modern protective unit, without sacrificing its tradition. Today, it's a force of just 135 men, yet each is trained with the intensity of an elite soldier. Entry is not easy. A candidate must be Swiss, Catholic, unmarried, and must have completed Swiss military training. He must be between 19 and 30 years old and stand at 174 centimeters tall, and bring with him not only a spotless record, but a calling. Once accepted, a recruit moves into the Guard's barracks within Vatican City. There he undergoes further instruction, not only in the history and ceremonial duties of the Guard, but in firearms, hand-to-hand combat, VIP protection, and surveillance tactics. In private, they wear suits, body armor, and earpieces. Their weapons are no longer pikes and swords, but Glocks and rifles, and modern anti-assault tools. When the Pope travels, the Guard sends advanced teams. They assess threats, plan escape routes, liaise with local security forces, and quietly monitor crowds. At major events such as Easter Mass, papal conclaves, state visits, they form an outer ring of defense, some visible, others not. Their cooperation with the Vatican Gendarmerie ensures that every layer of papal protection is accounted for. The gendarmerie handle perimeter and law enforcement, the guard protects the pontiff himself. Many operate in plain clothes with concealed weapons, their identities only known to a few. They may smile for the tourists, but they are watching everyone. For the men of the Swiss Guard, this is a vocation grounded in fate, duty, and silent resolve. They live within the Vatican's walls, structured by discipline and devotion. Many attending daily masses, some going on to serve as priests or police. Each May 6th, new guards raise 3 fingers and swear to protect the Pope, even in the shedding of blood. They haven't fired a shot in decades, but remain ever ready. Tourists see pageantry. In truth, they are weapons cloaked in tradition. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Odd Historian. If you would like to know more about the Swiss Guard, check out the books linked in the description. And check out my Patreon for exclusive content and other awards. See you next time.